Welcome to Dad Esquire, the podcast for lawyer dads who are navigating the courtroom, the office, and the chaos of fatherhood. I'm your host, Matthew Korn, a practicing attorney and dad of 4. At Dad Esquire, we tackle the unique challenges of balancing life as a lawyer dad. From work-life hacks to parenting wins and fails, I'm here to share stories, tips, and tools to help you thrive in both worlds. So grab your coffee, take a break from the billable hours, and let's spend some time focusing on being the best lawyer and dad you can be. It's time to dive in. This is Dad Esquire.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to this month's Lawyer Dad of the Month, February 2025. And it's my buddy, good friend, Tom Werge. Just want to say I've been super excited to meet with Tom and talk to him. He's got an awesome story. You guys are going to love it. And then before he jumps in to introduce himself, I just want to apologize in advance for my scratchy voice. It is January 27th. I was in Kansas City last night. I'm a diehard Bills Mafia member, and I lost my voice screaming. So apologies in advance, but hopefully we'll be able to muddle through it. And Tom's going to do most of the talking anyway. So I'm really excited to introduce Tom. Tom, and congratulations on being Lawyer Dad of the Month. And thanks for being a member of Dad Esquire.
Thank
Tell
you.
us a little bit about yourself, Tom. Tell us whatever you want to start with. Your family, your job. Tell us all of it.
Well, I guess since it's dad ask, I'll go dad first and ask second. And so I am the proud father of 3 amazing kids. I have an 11-year-old boy, Miles, who is getting ready to go to middle school. We've been looking at middle schools for the fall. And then I have twins, Annie and Alton, who are 8 and are in 2nd grade. And I am married to my wife, Halie, of 18 years, I think now. And I live in Denver, Colorado. I also, when I'm not lawyering, have played for the last, it's going to be 30 years next year, in a band called 12 Cents for Marvin to fill my free time. and But I'm here from my office in Denver, Colorado, where I run a small law firm called Werge Corbin Law Group with my partner, Greg Corbin. We represent small business clients. I run the litigation side of the practice, doing all different types of commercial, small business litigation. And then my passion area, which has been growing over the years, has been music, copyright litigation, and music industry generally. Litigation work, which has really expanded, including a bunch of work out in California that I've been doing. And on the other side of our practice, my partner does transactional work and represents nonprofits. I think that just about sums it up.
Yeah, I feel like I needed a notebook to start writing down notes of all the things because you're a busy man. Is this your new law office in Denver?
It is, yeah. We bought a building in the fall in September, and so it's an old Victorian, and we just love it. So after COVID hit, I was downtown after I had moved from working for a large law firm, large Denver litigation boutique, I guess I should call it, but it's actually like the 5th largest firm in Colorado, Wheeler Trigg. And when I moved, I wanted to stay downtown, but when COVID hit, I said, I want to get out of downtown. And so I found an office that was 6 blocks away from my house. And then when Greg and I partnered up, we stayed there. He actually introduced me to the space and had been at that space for a few years beforehand. And then this fall, we just bought our own building that was just a block and a half away from our old space. And we're super happy here. It's a lot
That's
of fun.
really cool. Congrats on the office. I remember when you were posting about it, and I think it's so cool. You really literally hung your shingle on a building, which is cool. So you've already talked a bit about your kids and your wife Halie. I want to ask you, and let's just do our I guess disclosure. You and I have known each other for a long too many years for me to want to admit on this podcast. But we met at Georgetown Law as transfer students. So tell us a little bit about why you decided you wanted to be a lawyer, just leading up to that? Because I think you've got a cool, you weren't just a straight through to law school guy. So just tell us a little bit about that too.
Yeah. I kind of had a long and winding road leading to the practice of law. When I was in high school, I had a high school internship in Prince George's County, Maryland, where they placed us at different law firms, and I had like the best experience. And that was back in the day. I was kind of like a gopher for this small firm, driving and delivering documents to be filed down at the courthouse in downtown DC and in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and it was so exciting and exhilarating. So I always had this thought of practicing law in the back of my head. But when I went to undergrad, when I wasn't playing with the band, which took up most of my time, I was studying business and information systems, and I worked in that field for about 6, 7 years before I bit the bullet and finally went to law school. And it was really my wife Halie, and I love, of course, what we have in common is that both of our wives are named Halie.
Yeah, that's
Right?
right. That's right. Spelled differently, but yes, it's very.
Shout out to all the Haleys out
I know
there.
we've had some confusing times. I think your son got confused one time when you were referring to my Halie, so it's my Halie and your Halie.
Exactly. But yeah, at a certain point, Halie said I had taken my LSAT years before, and I think it was getting close to expiring. And she said, "Tom, you've been talking about going to law school ever since I met you. Are you going to go or not?" And I was like, I guess I'm going to law school. So, I applied and spent my first year of law school down at FIU in Miami, Florida, and did really well. And then transferred to Georgetown, where you and I met, Matt. But um, for me, transferring up to Georgetown was also like coming home because I was back
Mhm.
in my old stomping grounds, and so that was a really really amazing time. And my Halie and I had met out here in Colorado when I was actually unemployed. Great time to meet your future partner
Interesting.
because you know, put up with you when you're unemployed. You got them on the hook. And anyway, we ended up moving back to Denver after I clerked for a judge at DC Superior Court, the trial court for the District of Columbia, for about a year and a half after law school, and then moved back to Colorado. Got an amazing job at the firm I mentioned before, Wheeler Trigg, and was there for about 3.5, almost 4 years before I sort of said, wow, I really need to figure out what I'm doing next. Kind of did a public sector job search, and I'd always had this thought in the back of my mind of starting my own practice. It seemed a little early to do it, but as I was doing my public sector job search and in the meantime putting together my business plan for launching my own practice, I just realized that that's what I needed to do. And I pulled the trigger, and it's going to be 10 years in September of my independent law practice. So it's been a really wonderful thing for me.
Yeah, it's been awesome to watch from the sideline. I mean, seeing your firm grow, just you, and I know you were in like some co-working space at one point, and paralegal was at a desk right next to you. And I mean, just to see your growth and how your firm has grown has been super exciting. And can't tell you how impressed I am by just that entrepreneurial spirit you have, that you're like, I'm just going to go out and do this myself because I have a passion and I'm good at it. And it's been really cool to watch. And I know you've had some like high profile cases. I'm not sure how many of those we can talk about on this, if they're active, but I know you've had some really cool high profile work. So um, weave that in if we can. Now let me ask you. Let me jump into what's one thing about being a dad that surprised you the most?
Well, you know, I think when my Haley and I met, neither one of us knew if we wanted to have kids or not. And when it came to time that it was time to have kids, it was like, okay, we're gonna have kids. And you don't always get to choose, when you're having kids. And we had a lot of trouble up front, and had to Miles, our eldest, was an IVF baby, which was amazing miracle. But we went through a years long journey that started when we were still in DC and ended when we were back in Colorado, to have Miles, which was just, he's an absolute miracle. But the biggest surprise was when we decided to have our second and final child. And when we decided to do that, well, when you have fertility, they often have embryos. And so we still had embryos at the fertility center. And we said, okay, we're going to do what any parent needs to do, is call them up and set up an appointment and get back in there and do the thing, right? And we called them up and they said, we can't get you in for 2 months. And we're like, what? 2 months? Oh my goodness. This was, long before COVID, and 2 months seems kind of normal now. But anyway, so then we went off and just sort of went about our lives, and out of nowhere, Halie got pregnant on our own. And so we're sitting in there for her first ultrasound and telling the ultrasound tech this story. And so we said, so this is our miracle baby. And she said, this isn't your miracle baby. These are your miracle babies. And the moment she said that, Halie started crying. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And I just started laughing, just like a deep belly laugh. I'm like, you can't make this stuff up. This is crazy. And so our twins were the biggest surprise of parenting, quite literally. And but they've been such a blessing to have Annie and Alton. They're just amazing small humans, and to have the boy girl twins is also particularly special because they kind of act like a married couple, right? They bicker all the time, but they just love each other so much when it comes down to it, and it's beautiful to see them continue to grow up. But that's probably the biggest surprise.
That's an awesome story. I mean, I remember we have four, as you know, and three boys, and then we adopted our daughter. So, but with each of the three boys, I remember going to that first ultrasound appointment, and I only had one question, which was mostly a statement. It was more a leading question, I suppose, as a lawyer. There's only one in there, right? That's like every time. So, I mean, again, the idea of, even as somebody with four children, the idea of having two at the same time just boggles. And, there's triplets and there's more than that too, but just having two at the same time is incredible. I assume you didn't get much sleep in the first year or so. One of them always awake.
I feel like the body blocks that out pretty good, at least for me. I mean, I think on how giant Haley's belly was before she gave birth. And I just look back and we have a couple of pictures and I'm just like, man, she looks so great. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What surprised you about being a lawyer? It's kind of not a second career. You had kind of a job before law school, but what surprised you most about being a lawyer?
A couple of things. I think at first, when I went in and I was working at the larger firm, um, of course you're drinking from a fire hose and learning so many things. And so there's a lot of surprises when it comes to like the practice of law. But I think as my career has gone on, one of the things that recently has surprised me about the practice of law has been really practicing in other states and seeing the difference in honestly the levels of professionalism. I'm very, very lucky to practice in a state like Colorado, and I've certainly experienced plenty of unprofessionalism here, from time to time in dealing with certain lawyers. But I feel really blessed to practice in a place that is by and large very above board collegial. We have a really relatively small bar for we're in a relatively small state, and so but also just the culture generally here is just it's a great place to practice law and specifically to litigate. So I feel blessed, but I am regularly surprised in some of the other jurisdictions I litigate in when folks just don't seem to care that much about the rules or being above board.
I have the same experience because, and I'm from New York originally, upstate. Again, Bills fan, tough night last night, but from Rochester, New York. But I moved to South Carolina, And South Carolina has a very similar bar. We're a small, tight-knit bar. Part of our rules of professional responsibility are, candor and collegiality with the rest of the bar and the court. And it's expected that you're going to be professional and you're going to be collegial. Um, and I was surprised to learn that that was not part of the rules of professional responsibility for all states. But it's not. And it is, I've often say this job is tough enough, it's stressful enough. We don't have to be jerks to each other while we do it. Sometimes I use different words than jerk, but that's
100%.
listening to
I've got
that.
a big case. I've got a big case right now, and my opposing counsel is a lot like me. I think we're almost exactly the same age, have young kids, and you would think that, well, I mean, sitting here on Dad-esque, that we would have a lot in common, which we do. We have a ton in common, but it's amazing how there can still be so much, um, just real bluster and lack of focusing in on, hey, we're both doing this really hard job. Let's work together to figure out how to get it done efficiently. Because when you're doing trial work, a lot of it, you and the opposing counsel can frankly become friends. And if you do, and figure out how to try a case efficiently, it's often the very best thing for your clients, I've found. And when you don't, maybe it generates some extra money for you or your firm, but otherwise, it's just, it seems to me to be a waste. But
Yeah, you can be a zealous advocate for your client without making the job even more difficult, I think. And I've benefited from some great mentors that have taught me that along the way. It's easy, when you're sitting there getting that email requesting an extension, to say, nah, I'm not giving them that extension. But I learned the lesson very early on from partnering in my office. You're going to be the one that needs that extension someday. And so it's thinking about those things and how we treat people that matters, and I think makes the profession. There's plenty of lawyer jokes out there, but I think by and large the profession is filled with people who want to do a good job for their clients, but want to be good people along the way too. So I want to talk a little bit. February at Dad-esque, we're doing monthly themes now. We're going to do time management in February because that's probably, as people have been joining the community, I have some questions that just kind of get an idea of what are people looking for? What do you want to be getting from Dad-esque? And I think a lot of it is time management. How do I balance these two roles? But before we get into that, I think just for some more context, because we haven't talked about it yet, but your wife's illness, let's talk about that because I think that will give some more context to our discussion about time management.
yeah, so my wife Halie, after we had the twins, she had a lump that they thought was a clogged milk duct, and it turns out that it wasn't, and that it was cancer. And so that was now over 7 years ago, when she was first diagnosed with breast cancer. We went through the whole initial process, and she responded well to the treatment, and then she was cancer free for about a year, and then it came back and it was stage 4. So right now, she has stage 4 metastatic breast cancer, which is a really, really serious condition. And a year after she got diagnosed, that it had actually come back, it spread to her brain, as well, and she ended up having a seizure, which was out of nowhere, which was really scary. But it ended up being potentially life-saving because it alerted us that it had gotten up there, and the docs were able to jump in and really beat it back. And here we are, many years later, past the time that I think anyone sort of expected that Halie would be able to really survive with this kind of really aggressive form of breast cancer. And we're still going, and it's a beautiful thing, and we're thankful for every day that we have with her. She's no longer working, and she's now on disability, but she's still an amazing super mom with the kids. Our kids just had amazing holidays, and it's primarily because she was the one planning those things. And one of the things that's been tough as the disease has progressed a little bit has been the time management stuff. I always relied on my Halie for like all of the time management that related to the home, to the kids, maybe even our social lives. all
Yep.
of that. And that's a very, I think, traditional thing that can happen sometimes when, when one spouse is working more and the other's working a little bit less. Although she worked a lot and was always a very successful career person and businesswoman, and that's been a hard thing to deal with as well. But one of the things that I'm continuing to learn is, oh gosh, how do I manage all those things? How do I start to knowing that, eventually I'm going to be the one who needs to make all of the schedules, do all of these things. How can I learn and take that in? And how do I balance that with my busy practice
Forming a
and
law firm.
maybe trying to get in a rehearsal with the band every now and again. Another thing we spoke about, Matt, is I also then lost a bandmate last year to colon cancer. He got diagnosed, and within 9 months, he passed, and that was just last year. And it was such a different experience to watch that happen and compare and contrast that with Halie's, 7 years now that she's had cancer since she was initially diagnosed, and how that's, continuing. But I miss Nick a lot. And I learned a lot from him, even in his passing really quickly. And in any event, it's a lot. It's a lot to
Yep.
juggle. And you just have to take the time to do the planning is the key that I've sort of realized is I'm not a planner naturally. I'm not a particularly organized person naturally. And so you have to take the time, when you're sitting there watching the Bills and hoping they're going to win on the couch, you're looking
Yeah.
over the calendar for the week to come and trying to figure all that out and figuring out the kids' activities and what they're going to be doing. It's a lot and it's really hard. But the only way I think to approach it is to take the time to do it or to put people in place that are really good and can help you.
Yeah, I'll say, I mean, I've known Halie as long as I've known you, and she is probably one of the strongest women I've ever met in my entire life. And it is, I know you said it was a surprise, but like we're 7 years in now. I'm not surprised. Like Halie is probably the strongest person I've ever met, and has some really cool stories we don't have time for today, about her
There's no
strength.
doubt. She's
Her
amazing. She's
Yeah,
amazing.
and her, I follow along with her blog and her just sharing her story, which I think is so important because people in that position are going to get so much from reading about her journey. And every blog post she does is filled with strength and hope and just really cool stuff. So maybe we can share the link to that in the show notes, so that people can see it because it's an awesome story.
I love that. That would be great.
So you gave a little bit about, let's ask just, can you think of a particular, because you gave a little bit about how to, planning and when to do that and just kind of multitasking. Can you think any specific examples or moments when work-life balance felt impossible? How did you handle that? Some just times where you were like, I just don't have any more rope.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that happens regularly, especially, if you're doing trial work like I do. Anytime you're getting close to a trial, how do you continue to balance and how do you continue to show up at home and be there for your spouse and for your kids? It's hard. It's really hard. I think that again, focusing on your calendar, I can't understate how important it is to like have your calendar completely loaded up, block out the time that you need when you can. Um, get people to help you on that. If you have an assistant that can help you on some of these things, we're so used to, I think, in this new age, it's like, oh, hey, we all use technology. I remember being a young associate and saying, God, why are these partners like sending these little tasks to their assistants to help them out with this? Like, why don't they just do it themselves? Are they actually saving any time? And then where I'm at now, I'm like, oh my gosh, even if it saves 1 minute,
Yeah.
that's really valuable. And so having folks that you can rely on that are organized is absolutely critical. My partner and I are actually working on hiring a new person that's like the idea being that they're going to be our executive assistant, not a legal assistant, like executive assistant, like
Yeah.
the kind that like a CEO has, right? That just keeps them organized on top of everything. And that's one of the things we're going to work on for this year is hiring for that position, just so we have someone that can do that. But when things get really tough and really nutty, I'm not always the best. I'll be honest, I'm not. But you have to remember to slow down. You have to remember that when that phone call comes in from your wife, or your kids, you take the call and you let everything else go that's going on. And that I'm saying that out loud because I don't always do that. It's hard. It's really hard when you're in the thick of it and just got a nasty email from opposing counsel, and then the phone rings like, wow, what's going on? That's the time to slow down. That's the time to take some deep breaths. God, I don't know that we when things have been really tough, also go talk to your doc about it, right? Make sure that you're seeing someone for therapy, but if you also need some help, there's lots of medications out there that can do wonders in times of real difficulty. And I've benefited from being on some medications that have helped me through some of the really difficult times with Haley's illness, especially. And that's important. And then having someone to talk to for you is absolutely critical. I think every lawyer dad out there should have a therapist, someone that's just in your corner that you can talk to about these things, that can give you the perspective that you need to keep it in perspective.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a
yeah.
really, really important. Again, like it's like just gold. All these things you're saying, I'm trying to keep tabs of it. One of the things I want to highlight though is the delegation. The delegation is so critical, and as we focus this month and Dad Ask on time management, that's one of the things that I want to really focus on is delegating things. It's hard sometimes for me. I think this is probably not atypical of lawyers to be kind of want to be in control, want to do it yourself because you're the one that's going to do it the best or the way you want it done. And delegation is so critical, especially as you advance in your career. And then automation. I mean, I recently created one of these book a meeting with me things in Outlook. And it's because I realized I was probably spending 30 minutes to an hour a week where clients or colleagues or opposing counsel were saying, can we get on the phone and have a conversation? And I was going through my calendar and said, okay, Monday I'm available from 9 to 11 and from 1 to 3. And I was spending so much time doing that. And I'm like, I don't have to do all this. I just have to have a link that shows my availability. Now I gotta stay on top of that because sometimes I get meetings scheduled and I forgot to block the time. Return travel from Kansas City today. I was like, I've got to make sure I put that on your calendar. And so, but the automation and delegation, so you can focus on the things that really matter, the things that only you can do, and that you're going to do. You need to do them, and then there's other tasks that you don't need to do that you can find other ways around that. So, I really appreciate you highlighting that too.
Completely agree.
I want to talk about parenting wins. What's your proudest moment, or one of your proudest? You probably got a lot, but what's one of your proudest moments as a dad? Brag on yourself.
So a couple weeks ago, speaking of therapy, Halie and I meet with a social worker from the cancer center who's just an absolute godsend. And she asked us to bring the kids in. And so we kind of had like a little like family therapy session. And during that session, the therapist just sort of sat there and after the kids kind of left, she had some time with us. The kids sort of went and destroyed the waiting room, and let us chat for a minute. And she just said, wow, Tom and Halie, I know what you guys are going through is so hard, but like, look how good your kids are doing. Look at how well they are, what amazing, you know, small humans they are, and to hear someone say that, especially someone with that kind of, training and background, felt like, wow, it was almost a sense of like, I don't deserve that because this is so hard and we are both so imperfect in trying to parent. But to hear someone say like, you guys are really doing a great job, like felt so good.
Yeah,
So I'll take that.
that's really cool, and it puts it in perspective for me when my kids are fighting over the video game that one of them didn't follow the rules or wasn't playing fair. I mean, there's some perspective there that I want to impart to my kids too. That like we try to do that with our kids. There are tough things in life, and then there are things that really don't matter. And who won Mario Kart last night? Probably not on the list, although it feels really important when you're 7. Um,
Absolutely.
so we play a lot of Mario Party in our house, and sometimes there's tears, sometimes there's bragging. I'm all for competitiveness as long as you're a good sport. So we try to impart that to our kids too.
Matt,
Uh,
do you ever wonder about like how much of this competitive is being fed because like your dad's a lawyer, right? You obviously inherently have some level of competitiveness and they feed off of it. And then when they give it back to you, it's like, I know what you're doing, but don't do that.
yeah,
how do we push back on that? That is a question I ask myself a lot, and
I,
balancing it out.
I agree. I think some of it's DNA, but like it's I don't yeah, I tell this story a lot. But when my oldest MJ Matthew Jr. was, I don't know, 3, we put him in the shower and he would not get out of the shower. At the end he's done, but he's still playing with his toys. And I'm like, MJ, you got to get out. You got to get out. And he's a first child, so he's generally a rule follower, but he just was more interested in his toys. And so suddenly one day I was like, you know what? I'm an adult and I've got a way. He's the most competitive human being I've ever met. And I said, all right, MJ, I bet you I can count to 20 before you can get out of the shower. And I would count as fast as I could. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And within every time, like 3 seconds in, he'd be out of the shower because he had to win. And one night he was like, Dad, it's okay that you lose. He's like, maybe someday you'll win. And I was like, I can't wait till I can tell you I won every single time we played that game. This is just
I love that.
it's that competitive spirit, which I love. And again, as long as he's being a good sport about it and he's not rubbing it in people's faces, I like that. I like the drive. So just a fun little tidbit there. Tell me about one of the things that I'm really interested in, kind of exploring in Dad Esquire is it just what lessons are we learning from our kids that um, we can apply to our work? What lessons are from work are we applying to our kids? Tell me a little bit about that.
Great question. I think that what kids give us is, you know, kind of along the lines of what the story you were just sharing. It's like they we keep it, they can keep help us keep it in perspective of seeing what they're focused on, seeing the world through their eyes, seeing creativity again, learning and feeling the excitement of discovering new things about the world, being able to be with them and experience that ourselves. And it keeps things in perspective of, we have these high stress and often very important roles as lawyers, and we're helping people and we're trying to do really important work. And then you go home and these kids are like, yeah, but like, look at this, piece of artwork that I made in class. And it's like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And this is so much more important than what I was doing today to have this moment with you to talk about it. That is the gift that keeps on giving. I like to say that parenting is the best thing that I've ever done in my life and also the most difficult thing that I've ever
Yeah,
done in my life. It is both of those things at the same time. And that's why I think it is so rewarding to help these little humans grow up and hopefully be self I don't know, not serving, what's the word I'm looking for, Matt? Just like be
self-sufficient.
real human beings.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I think that's the goal is I want my kids to understand the value of hard work, to, you know, see that in me and get to a point where they are on their own and they're doing it. And I can't wait to see them raising their own kids. And that, you know, one of my goals is how can I set the right tone and the right example for them so that someday when they're raising their kids, they're like, I had a good dad and I want to be like him, better than him. But that won't be a super high bar for them.
Hey, that's not true, Dad Esquire.
Tell me, all right, we're going to get to the fun questions in just a second, but I want to ask you one more. You know, you've talked a little bit about time management strategies and things, and I don't know if this exists, but is there one strategy or dad hack? You know, what's the secret? What's the secret that allows you to do all the incredible things you do?
Well, I might answer a slightly different question. And
Yep.
I'm thinking this is like a deposition now, and you're going to be like, Tom, listen to the question that I'm asking you and please answer it. Um, but I think one sort of, I guess, dad hack that I've done over the last 2 years that I've found to be like really helpful and pretty amazing is daddy trips. So starting last year, I take one of the kids just solo on a trip with me. It might be a work trip that I can sort of figure out how to have a kid there as well, or maybe there's some other people, but it's solo with me and one of my kids, and just for them to be able to have time to do one-on-one time. Because when you have multiple kids, it's really difficult. I mean, gosh, you must know that more than most folks. And not everyone's going to be able to do this, and it also sets an interesting sort of expectation because then they're like, okay, when's my daddy trip? And when
Yep.
Annie came to me and said, hey, the boys went on daddy trips, this was like right before Christmas, the boys all went on daddy trips this year, but I didn't get to go on one. And I was like, Annie, I'm so sorry. Well, and I was like, well, hey, do you want to go with me to Tucson next week to watch the Colorado State University Rams play in the Snoop Dogg Bowl? And she was like, "Oh my God, yes, of course."
That's
And we
awesome.
went down to Tucson and saw a bowl game together, and just got some amazing one-on-one time. Just a nice excuse to do that together, which is really I would encourage to find those time. And it doesn't have to be a trip, right? It's figuring out how to get that one-on-one time, whether it's going out for lunch or just going on a walk or doing whatever, throwing a ball or dancing together.
Yeah, I recently had one of those with my daughter, who's like 2.5 now. But a couple months ago, my wife took the three boys to WWE something, SmackDown or something, came to Columbia, and that's not really my cup of tea. I'll take them to Monster Jam. I like the monster trucks, but the WWE stuff is not for me. But my wife kind of enjoys it, so she's like, I'll take the boys. And my daughter and I got to go, and we had, we went to like I love McDonald's. I think we ate at McDonald's, and then went and got like ice cream, and it was just so much fun just being one on one, and it is so important, especially when you have multiple kids, to have that one on one time. And the other thing I try to do is, I used to do more regularly before I realized what it was doing to my belly, is I would take my kids on Saturday mornings to Dunkin' Donuts, and it was donuts with daddies on Saturday mornings. And we would just go, and it gave my wife a little bit of a break, right? Like, so I'd take the kids, go to Dunkin' Donuts, maybe stop at Target and walk around and get some whatever we needed. And it gave her a couple hours apiece by herself. She stays at home with the kids, and it's a lot. I always say she works harder than I do, and so she needs some time to herself. So it's both the one-on-one time, and then also the, can I relieve the other person entirely for a few hours, even just a couple hours to sleep in, to do whatever, right? So
Yeah,
cool.
totally agree. And dividing and conquering is a great strategy that I think families sometimes forget about, right? Like, hey, if you have multiple kids, like one of you can take one, go do something completely different, and that will oftentimes alleviate a lot of, I think, stress off of both. But I can't. I also can't disagree with you. Like Halie works so much harder than I do, and she doesn't have a job. But she does have a job. Oh my gosh, and it is a full-time job. And also with managing her medical care and going to appointments and still, still showing up for the kids and doing all the things. I'm just in awe, and very blessed.
Awesome. All right, we're going to do some quick hit questions that I didn't give you all of them to look at in advance. So this can be a little impromptu. Um, but what's your favorite family tradition?
Favorite family tradition. We have a holiday tradition that was passed down from my mom's side of the family. And my mom passed away a couple of years ago. So this year when my kids said, "Hey, Daddy, when are we going to do the almond gift?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh," it made me so happy that they thought of that. But the almond gift, it's a Scandinavian tradition where you make a rice pudding. It's like a sweet rice pudding. And then in one of the bowls, you hide a shaved almond. And then everyone eats their stuff. And then one person has the almond and they hide it in their mouth. And the rest of everyone tries to guess who has it. And
Oh,
you
wow.
kind of try to throw people off if you have the almonds, but if you don't, you try and pretend like you have it. And whoever ends up with it gets the first gift of Christmas. And Annie actually won it this year, and she got a little stuffy and had the almond. She kind of produced the almond faster than she should have played, harder to get for a longer period of time.
He was
But
excited.
doing this holiday traditions, it's just there's nothing better.
That's cool. I don't know how many stuffies does she have. Does she amass them like my children?
And the almond gift was a stuffy
Yeah, that's what I was
this
saying.
year.
She, I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean,
they
they
count.
have
My,
so
my
many, and
son
then
Josh
at a
was like, I
certain,
have 76 stuffies, but can I get another one today at the grocery store? And I'm like, no, we don't need any more.
I never understood that. And then they end up in like a giant stuffy bag
Yeah.
or box or something, and they always want more. And it's still great when they get one. I don't
We look
know.
at the
I don't know
room
what to
and
say
get it
about
for
that.
him. He can't even sleep in his bed anymore. He's got too many stuffies, but he's still every time we're out and he sees one, that's what he wants. And that was he wrote a letter to Santa this year, and Stuffy was number one on his list for what he wanted from Santa. Next was an iPhone, and I told him Santa doesn't, they don't make iPhones at the North Pole. Unfortunately, you're seven. All right, so you. I think one of the coolest things about you is that you're the lead, the front man for a ska band. And so, tell me, what is your favorite song that you like to sing with your kids?
Oh, I like to make up songs with my kids. So just sort of periodically, impromptu. If I want to give them a hard time, I usually sing a song like, you know, um, there's my kids used to be good, now they're bad, and that makes dad sad. And just kind of sing along with them, and make up songs with them. Sometimes my daughter is showing some interest in music, and
Cool.
my boys are showing interest in listening to music. Annie's showing some interest in making music, which makes me really excited. But it's interesting following along with them with music. I feel like the boys, their entire knowledge of music is based on whatever's playing in the lobby in Fortnite. Whatever that may be is just that's the jam right there. Or as they would say, it's bussin'. Um, and that's gotten them into like they're really into like Eminem, because Eminem and Snoop Dogg and some other old school hip hop artists were like featured on Fortnite, so they like know all about Eminem, and they're like, "Oh, I love this."
I took I took
Um,
the I took the two older boys this summer to their first real concert. They said, "Dad, it's not our first concert." I said, "Yeah, it is." And they're like, "No, we went to Trans-Serbian Orchestra last year." And I was like, "Yeah, no, that." And I go every year. I love TSO, so don't get me wrong. I'm not putting down TSO, but I was like, "This." We went to Imagine Dragons, and I said, "This is going to be a very
oh,
different experience than TSO." And it was awesome. I mean, it was cool going, and that my boys love it. And we were listening to the albums on the way there, and that was one of those cool, to take them. And they were young. But what I loved about it is, out of all the shows, did research on this. Out of all the shows you can take your kids to, it was like one of the more family friendly shows. We had real seats. We weren't in the lawn, and they don't curse
Nice.
a lot. They don't curse a lot in their music.
Yeah.
So I enjoy that because we can listen to it together. They really like it. They like it. But I've tried to get them into like Dave Matthews Band, and it just hasn't worked. There's a lot of moans from the back of the car when I try to play music I used to enjoy. So, I like Imagine Dragons, so it's fun for me too. Um,
Yeah.
what I want to ask you this: what I really like this question. What kid show or movie do you secretly or not so secretly enjoy watching?
Oh,
Or what's your recent
easy.
favorite movie?
Okay. Well, I will just say that the best Disney movie of all time, and possibly one of the best movies of all time, is Moana original. And I took the kids to see Moana 2. They loved it. They suggested it was better than the original, but it's not. No way.
Gee, who
Moana,
for you?
not so much.
I've listened to the entire soundtrack from Moana 2, having not seen the movie. We listened to it on repeat in the car on the way to school. Is Chihu and all the other songs. That's it, right? Chihu. I think that's
Chihu, yeah, yeah.
um,
But like, I mean, yeah, I mean, Chihu hits, all right, but like, come on. I mean, if you listen to the original Moana soundtrack, it's so much there in the storytelling
it's good.
and what does Maui say? Um, you're welcome,
You're
you
welcome.
know?
Yeah, and I love that. I love that we listen. I try to play Moana 1 because I agree. I think the music's better in Moana 1, and but you've got a 2 and a 4-year-old in the back seat yelling at you Moana 2. Um, you know,
You
you
got to
got
deliver, Dad. You got to deliver. You got to stay with the times. Keep up with it. It's hard.
what word would your kids use to describe you?
Word?
One word, if they had to say, somebody asked them, tell me about your dad.
Uh, maybe fun. Um, crazy. I'm not sure. I'd like to get them on here and see what they have to say. But I do like to have fun with them and even though I am also the rule enforcer and all those things, I like to also balance that out with, plenty of time to have fun. One of the Gosh, you asked about traditions, and I hope this isn't going too far off. But what we started doing a couple months ago was reading Harry Potter every night. And so it's got them excited about bedtime, and it's old school because like it's just dad sitting there reading a book to all of them. But we're reading Harry Potter. We're on book 5 right now.
Wow.
So they might also say, I don't know, we like daddy because he reads to us or something. But
That's that's so cool. We're doing the same. I think we're only on 3, maybe 4. I forget. I'm reading them for the first time. By the way, I my
me
wife
too.
is a Harry Potter nut. She loves it. I've been to Harry Potter World and had butterbeer, and I didn't know what it was at the time. Now I'm reading it for the first time with my kids, which has been awesome. And then, like my oldest, MJ, he's rapt attention. The 7-year-old's kind of depends how tired he is. The 4-year-old just passes out every night when we're reading it. There's not a lot of pictures. We have the illustrated ones that have some pictures, but not a ton. So, but it's such a good thing to do. And I posted about this a few weeks ago, but there's actually studies out there that talk about the importance of dads reading to their kids. And when a dad reads to their kids, it really helps them do better in school. It helps them develop better reading skills. And so I think that's awesome that you do that with your kids.
I think it's also good for us. Like,
Yeah,
I spend a lot of my day, reading and writing as many lawyers do, but it's not the same as reading a fantasy, novel, and especially reading and having that opportunity to interact with your kids about it. It's almost like in some ways a meditation,
yeah,
and something that when we got back into that just a couple months ago, it's made me feel really good, in addition to they've been so excited about, oh, come on, you're gonna retest tonight, Daddy. Come on. It's
that's all.
fun.
That is awesome. Well, thank you, Tom. You're a super busy guy, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to do this with me. I really enjoyed it. I knew some of this and some of it's new to me, and I love that. Can't wait to come out to Denver and catch up with you again live in person sometime soon. And if you're in South Carolina, I hope you stop by. But and thanks for being part of Dad Ask. Again, we're going to focus on time management this month, and I'm really looking forward to some of the discussions we have in that community about. I'm doing this. I started this community so that one, we can share information, and I learn from you. I've learned some things just today from you that I'm going to try to implement into how I do things. And I think that's the benefit of having a community of other guys that you can talk to. You talked about it yourself, the importance of having somebody to talk to. And there's some issues that it takes a therapist, it takes a counselor, somebody that's trained. But I think there's also a benefit to having other guys that are doing the same thing you're doing. They're in the same part of life, or they're further along and they can speak into what you're going through and give you some tips too. So that's what we're trying to create at Dad Esquire, and I'm so proud that you're a part of it. So happy to recognize you as Lawyer Dad of the Month, and looking forward to seeing the community continue to grow and getting more tips from you along the way.
Thanks, man. I'm glad to be a part of it. And what you're creating with Dad Ask is it's really amazing to watch. And my hat's off to you. I don't know how you do it. Maybe you need to be the time management guru, or you must be, or you're inventing additional time, or maybe you have that little, what did Hermione have to, have the time go back? And I think that's book 3 where you're on, right?
Yeah.
It's something like that. You're amazing. And it's an honor to be a part of this. And thank you, Matt.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks for tuning in to Dad Esquire. If you found value in today's episode, leave a review and share it with other lawyer dads who could use a little extra support. For more tips, stories, and community, subscribe to our podcast and visit www.dadesq.com. If you're a lawyer dad who wants to join the community, submit your request to join today at www.dadesq.mn.co. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and on Instagram at dad_Esquire for even more updates and, of course, some lawyer dad jokes. Until next time, keep crushing it at work and home. You've got this, lawyer dad.